Today's video is regarding Gibraltar residency and a lot of changes happening at the moment. So how can UK expats navigate these? My name is Matt Penfold, here with my co-director Paul Correa. And I mentioned the date for this video, 17th of November today. So as a lot of people watching this will know, Gibraltar residency is currently on pause for everyone. So Paul, the all-important question, what is going on?
Well, it was paused on the 6th of October of this year, but there's been ample notice that the government of Gibraltar was planning to take measures to stem the flow of new residents into Gibraltar. What are the key changes? And then I'll go into the reason for the reforms. So permanent residency has been increased from 5 to 10 years. So they've doubled. The qualifying period for Gibraltarian status, Gibraltar British status, has been doubled from 10 years to 20 years, and then subject to ministerial discretion. In other words, after 20 years, there's no guarantee that you will be able to obtain British Gibraltarian status, which then opens the door to a full British passport for those who are not British already. So that has been tightened significantly. I mean, my first observation is that it doesn't look as if they put much thought into it. They just doubled the period. But you can see that the intention is no different to other Western countries where they are tightening their immigration policies. But Gibraltar in particular has been has taken draconian measures to try and stem the flow of new residents. And then the most controversial of the reforms is that they restrict citizenship by descent to one generation. So rather than going back to a grandparent, you're now restricted to a parent. I think that is rather harsh. In a way, I can understand for a small country, for a small state, microstate, you want to preserve the Gibraltarian identity and not let it be diluted by allowing too many people to come into Gibraltar, and then our way of life and our values and our culture is somehow diminished. So there's a logic to that. But to block people who are Gibraltarians by descent and to just make it extremely difficult for them to come back, why? I mean, there's no real justification for taking that measure. I don't think, because there's not, 50,000 Gibraltarians living in other countries. Not if you consider that citizenship by descent can only go to a grandparent. So it looks very unfair and very harsh. And then, of course, they have, as you know, and then the fourth reform is that they have redefined, what an adult dependent is. And again, I mean, we've had cases, Matt, where, the parents come and the child is in their 20s and then they seek to establish residency, but they are neither in employment nor are they students. And they get through the back door, and then maybe they want to take a course and go to university, everything gets paid. So they've tightened that too. And essentially they're blocking unless it's a genuine migration route. That is understandable too. And yes, and they paused residency as from 6th of October, but it should come as no surprise since they've been making noises but doing nothing for, I don't know, 6, 12, 18 months. I mean, there's been threats of taking action, but nothing actually happened. So I think they've done it without putting a lot of effort and thought into it, and they've consulted no one, and which has sent shockwaves through the territory because, yeah, it would have been sensible and advisable to seek the opinion of practitioners who are bringing particularly UK nationals, to Gibraltar and get their opinion before they formulate policy. That hasn't happened, and I don't think it will. Um, so yeah, and what has driven these measures? Well, I mean, firstly, I think one of the acts, I think is the Refugee Asylum Migration Act, goes back, I don't know, decades, and I think EU nationals, I think possibly since the UK joined the European Union, there's no distinction between EU nationals and UK nationals. So I think they're addressing that. They're addressing, the EU exit. They're addressing Gibraltarian Status and Immigration Act. So they're cleaning up the act to reflect the new reality and to tighten things as much as they can. What has driven this measures? Well, Gibraltar is a very small jurisdiction. It has had a population of 30,000 in 2013. The population has grown to almost 40,000. It's probably already 40 or in excess of 40,000. That's an increase of 33%. And you've got people from abroad coming in, which is fine. If you have a big country, probably you can absorb more migrants. But Gibraltar has a very unique culture and way of life, and you try and preserve it as much as you can. And you've got Brits abroad coming in, that's fine, but you've got all nationalities coming in at an unprecedented rate. On the other hand, of course, you need migration to grow your economy, because economies require more resources to be able to drive more economic growth. So it's a catch-22, and they're trying to find the balance. But the influx of new residents has put a massive strain on housing stock, on healthcare generally, on medical care for the elderly, on service infrastructure. And a lot of the people are coming in through no fault of theirs. The blame has to fall squarely on the government of Gibraltar. They're freeloaders because we made it so easy. They come in and some of them virtually pay no tax, and yet they are a burden on the state. I mean, it is not sustainable for any jurisdiction, let alone one of our size, 6 square kilometers or whatever it is. So and yes, and there've been a lot of freeloaders, and Matt, as you know, a lot of people ask, if I come, how will they find out I'm here? What do they do? And we've always been very clear. So you just cannot do that. They have a census, they knock on doors, you have to register for certain services. At some point, they pick you up. I mean, that's not a smart way of doing things, right? But some people think they can beat the system. And of course, as soon as they paused, there were a lot of people in employment and a lot of people being resident, but not registered as physically resident for many years, and they came out of the woodwork and they were knocking on I think it's the civil.
Yeah, the civil registration. And we got a lot of calls here. A lot of people who wanted to be anonymous, or I'm living here, but I don't qualify for residency, what I do. And said, look, you don't qualify for residency, you've got to play by the rules. And oh, but somebody told me, on Facebook, or someone told me in the pub that I can live there and just not register, and it's not how it works.
It's not how it works. I mean, we as a business have no sympathy, neither for freeloaders, nor do we have sympathy especially for those that break the rules. And we've always been very candid with applicants that try and be too smart. We do not entertain them, and we don't want to do business. And unfortunately, you're right. There were a lot of calls coming in. Can you now legitimize my position? Well, no, it's paused now. But Matt, going back to that point, and my personal opinion is that the fault lies with the government of Gibraltar again, because the cases we've had, they've had friendly landlords that have said, no, we won't, we'll let you stay and we won't report. The government of Gibraltar could put the onus on the landlord that they can enter into a rental agreement subject to a period of 3 months by which they need to have physical evidence that they are physically resident here and everything is legitimate. There could be some heavy fines for the landlords if they don't comply. And then you avoid landlords trying to cover up and aiding and abetting people who are coming over and not registering as tax residents. It is very easy to police this area if they really wanted to, if they have the political will to tighten the rules, but they haven't done so. I still think there's smart ways of avoiding, a situation where people are coming in and then staying below the radar, which is annoying as a business, whether it's Spain, Portugal, wherever it is. We never support um, any prospective clients that knock on the door wanting us to be a part of that. We don't do it in Gibraltar tax residents who are living in Soto Grande. We've never done that in the past. We shy away from that business because I don't think it's the type of business we want to be associated with. And now the question is, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when this pause opens? Because they're going to redefine the residency pathways and the requirements. And they say it's going to be the best, most attractive jurisdiction in the planet, but that remains to be seen. Unless you share what the conditions are and the eligibility criteria, one cannot really comment on whether it is that interesting or not. Clearly, people have to pay tax, and I think everyone should accept that. The question is, you have to find a sweet spot where it's attractive for the jurisdiction and it's attractive for the person who wants to come across. Because, these new entrants into or new residents are very good for the financial services marketplace. And I don't think we should push them back, particularly UK nationals. Many, many years ago, something very similar happened and people were outraged because, we are British nationals too. And even though it's a very small jurisdiction, I think there's a fine balance between what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, but bearing in mind the reality that we're a small jurisdiction. And yes, we don't want to dilute our culture and our way of living. And if you have, if we are inundated with new residents, then of course somehow our unique way of life can get diluted. And any, whether it's a microstate or a large country, you always try and protect those values. It's happening in the UK, it's happening elsewhere. But what's interesting is in the last 3 years alone, there's been like 1,000 applications a year, new individuals coming into Gibraltar. And of course, this treaty, which is going to be signed, they say, by the end of the year, that has opened the floodgates because the level of interest was so high that they had to pause Gibraltar residency and have a rethink. So that is behind, everything that is happening, and we are no different. We are waiting to see what's happening next. Hopefully, they might time it together with a new treaty and say, now we have a new treaty, which I think is wonderful. The ability to have unfettered access to Schengen and to be able to travel within Schengen, within the EU, without passport controls. I think it's a major plus. And a reverse Brexit of the 90 out of 180-day rule. Now you can do it consecutively. So clearly, it's very appealing to UK nationals in particular. They stay with the British pound, the British rule of law, English language, a very benign tax environment, fantastic weather, great facilities. I mean, why wouldn't they come if they can? But I think as a business, our recommendation would be, Matt, that when it does open, there's going to be, the civil registration office is going to be inundated with applications for residency, and on a first come first served basis. And as a business, we do offer the possibility of getting on a waiting list, and we as a business will prioritize and work diligently and push as hard as we can to get those applications through ASAP. But look, it takes time to put the documentation together. It takes time to make the submission. If people don't want to pay the deposit, that's fine. They have to go on a queue. And how long it will take is anyone's guess. So for any listeners who have a genuine interest in establishing Gibraltar residency, clearly they should seriously consider, getting at the top of our list. We already have, I think, 20 clients who've put their names down that want to be prioritized, and and they would have to pay a deposit, and then they are the first ones will process, and we'll put all our energies and we'll prepare all the groundwork as we go. Of course, we don't know what the eligibility criteria is, but we'll start gathering some documentation. I don't know what your thoughts are, Matt, but
No, I would agree. I think, although they've been talking here locally about the need to make amendments to residency, as you say, for some time, the pause really came out of the blue. It was one day we made the announcement, and I suspect when they introduce the new residency rules, that is going to come out of the blue. So, you need someone maybe to help you navigate that, and as you say, there's a lot of kind of pending applications already. There's all those people who didn't register when they should have before, and now you've got this build up, and we see it anecdotally from the calls we're getting, and bear in mind we have the UK budget, which we'll talk about separately, but an aggressive UK budget is going to trigger more people wanting to come here, as we saw last year with the autumn budget. So we will do everything we can to push people through. I think prior to the pause, residency applications were taking about 3 months. I think we can expect that time to go over. I think a big question I'm getting at the moment, and I level this one at you, Paul, because I know there's not an answer, so it's rather cool. But when do we think they will introduce the new rules? And that's an interesting one, because I think they're starting to work on it, and we can see that they've made the changes to the citizenship guidelines. So they're obviously working on this, but when will they on pause? It's difficult to say, I think.
it's very difficult to say. I mean, one can only speculate and try and use a bit of logic to arrive at or to try and understand, what the government is thinking and when they plan to reopen for new residency applications. But maybe they're just waiting to time it just after the treaty is signed. That would make sense, because then they have a positive, and they try and leverage that positive, whether that means that this fantastic new residency routes and pathways that they are developing are that attractive or not. Who knows? I mean, we don't know, because there's been no consultation with the industry, so there's been no leaks of any sort. So no one is really sure what the plan is, if there's a plan, but there must be. So we just have to wait and see. But the advice for people who are seriously considering establishing a residence in Gibraltar is that they should plan very early, that they should pay a deposit, go on a waiting list, and then as soon as the market reopens for new residency applications, we will have gathered some of the data and will be one of the first ones to put the application through. Otherwise, there will be, if there's 1,000 applications, because it's very attractive, and we know that there was, I know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. That's why they're pausing, they stopped, of people wanting to come over. It's a big problem. It's a big problem because you're just on the queue. This, the office that processes applications will be overwhelmed, probably undermanned, and God knows whether they've got the systems to be able to cope with such volume. And that leads to more mistakes and more delays. And how do they prioritize? So paying a deposit at least gives people the confidence that we will try and put them through ASAP. And if they don't want to pay the deposit, that's fine. Our price might also change, Matt, and the price of other practitioners depending on their requirements and how much more paperwork and how difficult it is to meet the new eligibility criteria. So yeah, they should really consider fixing and buying into the new price before it changes.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, wonderful. So the message today is, if you are seriously considering Gibraltar residency, I know there's a lot of people out there doing so. I think if you've taken the time to watch a video of Paul and I, then you must be halfway there. So yeah, reach out to us, Fiduciary Wealth Management, connect at fwm.gi. We're going to be releasing more videos as we have more information on this, so make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and like and follow the videos that you enjoy. And yeah, for those seriously consider it, reach out. We can have a conversation and we can add you to our list. But for now, thank you.
Please comment on our videos and please subscribe to our videos because you're going to have a constant stream of new videos. We give a lot of valuable information, which we share with the subscribers. And the intention is to be producing a lot of content throughout the remaining weeks of the year, and certainly in 2026 we're going to ramp up our content production, and I think it's free. All you need to do is subscribe. So please, if you can subscribe, it's fantastic value for money, value for no money. Perhaps
Yeah.
is a word.
The best price, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you for everyone who watched. We'll speak soon. Bye bye.